Hey Tony, it's great to see you again, mate. I know it's in the afternoon there; it's pretty early in Oz, but I hope you're well, mate.
I'm good, man. It finally warmed up, so it's been like 80, 90 degrees here, and I've been working out every day. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I started teaching again in my garage, which is insane after 20 years, and I'm having a
A
blast.
couple of videos, man. It's awesome.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really like that one with your wife too. She come in as
Oh, yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
demo.
You saw that video. Yeah,
Yeah,
she came in and I nailed her with the spear, and it was funny. Yeah,
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 yeah. It's quite funny, man. It's good,
yeah.
and you're getting some good response from that.
Yeah, I mean, we did no marketing on it. I just sent a couple emails out. We have over 80 people signed up for it. What's amazing, the perspective, the way I have Zoom set up, it's like you are doing one-on-one with me. Because
Yeah,
in Zoom, I can dedicate which screen everyone sees. So I've got on a tripod a spare phone facing my garage gym. And so it doesn't matter how many people are on the call. It just looks like you hired me one on one. And what's amazing about this, and this is also interesting for anyone out there, law enforcement, military, where you want to take your personal skills to the next level. Maybe you can get your organization to pay, but I always tell people you know, like it's on you. You're in a fight. It's on you. And a lot of times people just do the minimum standard to pass a PT test, and it's always, there's always a couple of officers or people in the military that are doing more because they recognize that day is going to come. So
yeah,
anyone interested in this, check that out. We may put a link in here on more information when we release
yeah.
this.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Especially in this time that we're in now, where the social distancing and people corralled, and some of the physical train, paradigms are sort of closed down a little bit because of the COVID,
Right.
and we will be sort of giving Australia access to you and your varying levels of coaching. I know, as I was saying last week, is one of our larger law enforcement organisations, spend a lot of time with you online,
Yeah.
and all linked in from around the country. So it was really cool. But mate,
Yeah. I wanted to throw something in there. We're just built out a program for a UK agency. They've got 30 trainers in their program, and they're figuring out their training, social distancing and training, and what they're doing, and of course this is going to change soon, and they want to hit the ground running. So we created 3 90-minute online programs to help them with, of course, our methodology, our strategies, our psychology, a very important block on managing fear and how to make decisions under duress, which of course is a specialty of ours, that whole no fear program, KNOW. So it's pretty cool. And we've got a digital program that's got 52 chapters online, all of our theory and stuff. So every one of their trainers is getting that. So while they're still isolated, you know, they're working their butts off, getting their mind sharp, getting their body sharp. But we had a bunch of law enforcement sign up for the garage gym thing because most people never ever got to train with me. I've got a mobile training team, 11 of my lead guys, and we've got 9 other people that are adjunct trainers. So most of the courses are not, for over a decade, haven't been taught by me as my company grew. And I would come out and I would do like little things or tier 1 military, they had discretionary funds. I would go do that. But most people in the last decade never saw me unless they came to my camp or came to like a conference that I was talking at. So this is an amazing way of like to actually interact with me live every week. And it was created because of the pandemic and the lockdown, because full transparency, all my in-person courses had to stop. So I had to do it to literally to save the company. I said, fuck it, I'm going to start teaching again. And so that's what's happening, but I'm not going to stop. Like if they lifted and they said, okay, the world's back, turn the lights back on, everyone go. I'm having so much fun with it because I've got the enthusiasm of the 20, I turned 60 on Saturday. I've got the enthusiasm of the 25-year-old Tony teaching back in the 80s, but I've got the experience of 42 years of studying violence, fear, and aggression. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like, it's the new norm, as you're saying, you know, this sort of delivery. But in 2 minutes, I was watching that video, you know, where you had Jenny come in, I got something out of it, you know, even with all of my operational experience, even there's that little snippet. So, you know, like, hey, we've talked about this before, but in Australia right now, it's coming up towards the end of financial year.
Right.
You know, we've got a lot of interest in high gear suits being the original and the only combative training suit that, you know, that anyone would want to look at. You know, you're the developer of it. You know, how about just a couple of minutes of guidance and insight on the suits, and, you know, also how many should, you know, an agency buy and why? And one more thing on top of that, let's offer them you. So if they maybe, you know, buy the appropriate amount of suits for, you know, that training continuum, maybe they can get some, you know, normally it would cost them some decent coin, but
yeah. So let me think about that one. I'd love to do. Listen, I'll show you guys some video of some high gear in action stuff. And I appreciate, of course, the support. Listen, high gear is, none of you would ever go grapple on gravel on a parking lot, right? If you're going to do some ground fighting, you'd put a mat down. If you're boxing, you'd put gloves on, that's padding. You'd put a helmet on, that's padding. If you're going to get punched in the teeth, you put a mouth guard on, that's padding. What high gear is, it's like a mat that you wear where you can go into any environment. Like most police and military do training in a mat room or in a training, like a scenario house where they've got padded walls or padded floors. And when I created high gear as a concept in the 80s, and it took me 5 years to develop it and finally get it to market in 1993, the idea was that you don't arrest and control rooms and houses. You need to arrest and control suspects, bad guys, right? And so what would happen is I would see so much training based around movement, and that's important. Getting in a door, getting on somebody, closing the gap. But nobody had any proper gear, because the other suits, and I'm friends with the people at Red Man, but let's say the Red Man suit, the fist suit, they were so bulky that the role player couldn't move like a real bad guy. And so my insight back then was threat discrimination, the ability to decide what level of force we need to use, is always going to be based on the movement of the bad guy, right? And so if the gear I'm wearing makes me move like the Michelin Man, then I'm too slow. If the gear I'm wearing doesn't allow me to run out of a room, then I'm giving a false sense of security to the people who are trying to stress inoculate in training, whether it's recruit or in service. So I'm going to show you a couple of videos really quickly to give you an idea of what we do. Now, my brain is spinning because what I would love to do, most people don't do scenario training as effectively as they can. I don't want to say wrong, because any scenario training is better than no scenario training. But you got to remember this: if you're not using gear, that means you're practicing pulling and missing. That means you're doing this or you're doing this. If you're wearing gear, you can make contact. That way, you know, my proximity sense is online. I've got agility and balance. I can I can identify a target and make contact with it. And so whether I'm muzzle striking or whether I'm indexing a palm strike and whether I'm pulling somebody into knee him, I know the gear isn't interfering with the role player. I actually make contact. And that is the only way to create confidence. And so if you're in the training unit listening to this, or if you're not, make sure you share this with people, because how somebody fares in their fight, a lot of times we look at the fight and we go, oh, they should have slipped, they should have zigged, they should have zagged. Why didn't they do the agency improved move here? Then, and what we're forgetting are two things. In a real fight, there's a different level of emotional, psychological fear. And then that fear and their ability to manage their fear is going to be intrinsically connected to the type of scenario training they did. And I use the word replication concepts, replication training. Most people do, let's say, hey, let's do some scenario training. And what they do is they come into a house and there's a guy in a suit that you can shoot at, and he's too bulky to move, but he's just standing in the corner with his weapon, and you come in and you go ding, 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 and you move at him. Or if he's a no shoot, you go grab him, throw him down. But he's really not trying to take a gun away. He's really not trying to tackle somebody. He's not really trying to run out. Imagine if you had a suit where I could put somebody in the trunk of a car and take him to a secondary crime scene and pop open the trunk and have the fight start there. And these, I'm describing things we've done with different organizations, right? Yeah. And I could actually have, like, there's no other suit that you could actually put 4 people in a vehicle, sit there in the gear, and have 2 officers roll up on the gear, on the car. And we have what's called a designated hitter drill, where we go, the driver is going to be cooperative, but the guy in the back seat, in the passenger seat, is going to pull a marking cartridge pistol out, and he's going to gesture and come across and move there. And we're going to evaluate how these officers are going to respond, right? But you need gear that you can shoot at, that you could fight at, that you could engage. And you literally could roll down a window in a car and jump out the passenger side in a high gear suit. Whatever you could do in real life, because the gear is less than 10 pounds head to toe. But anyways, I'll talk forever because I'm very excited about it. But you asked, like, what's the minimum?
Yeah.
And I'll explain this, and then we'll watch the video. You'll understand. When I designed the gear, and I only have my helmet here, but when I designed the gear, the rest of the gear's in the garage. But when I designed it, very, very streamlined, right? And so the mask, if I put it on, my nose actually just touches the inside here, so that when I get hit and the mask hits me, it actually pops my nose a little, which might make my eyes water if I got a big nose or I took a good hit. This is stress inoculation. Yeah. So when we first marketed the gear back in the 90s, we said it's impact reduction gear, not impact stopping gear. I want the good guys and the bad guys wearing high gear. And I want them to do, we have a protocol in the beginning where we do like a body impact training, where we're teaching people how to hit with speed and control the power, so that you get that and you go, oh, that would suck if I didn't have the gear on. And so if you take a knee to the ribs or to the solar plexus, or you take a shin kick across the legs, you feel it. Yeah. And then, because if your gear is so bulky that you don't care if you get hit, well, that's not real. Every human cares if they get hit. So if I'm afraid to get hit, I start to move my body, the target changes, everything changes. Let me share this real quick, because I'll talk for 9 hours. I just get so excited about it. So at a minimum, in a small agency, 2 suits, because you want to have good guy, bad guy. We've got 3 layers of foam on each suit: a soft, low density, a plastic trauma place, and then a more rigid, high density impact dispersion foam. So what's happened is these 3 layers are designed to hit these 3 layers, and then you've got 6 layers dispersing the blow. If the role player is only wearing gear and I'm coming across with an elbow, I'm transferring all that energy from my bone into the gear. So, if you got some big guys or some fit people, that's going to suck to be the role player. So at a minimum, you want that. But that's, if you're a legit agency, you want to always be reverse engineering your training. Listen, you could say in the US, they got legal phrases like failure to train adequately and deliberate indifference, where they go, oh, we don't have a budget. No, you need to provide the right training, because you're asking another human, male or female, to put themselves in harm's way. Are you doing everything you can to prepare them? And I will tell you this, the only fight a police officer or military personnel has a say in the outcome with the technology available to bad guys these days is a mano fight. You understand what I mean by that? I mean, that's a heavy concept. The only thing where I can influence my will, if I'm sitting here like this and you're talking to me and all of a sudden a red dot appears on my head, and you go like, that's a freaking sniper, like, and somebody shoots me through the window from 100 yards away, the spear system isn't going to save me. High gear is not going to save me. No training is going to save me, right? So if a bomb goes off, your training doesn't save you there. The only place, and this is a very provocative concept because I want people to realize how important scenario-based training is. The only place our training makes a difference is when we can touch the bad guy or the bad guy can touch us. Because if we walk into the room and we go, everyone get your hands up, and the guy turns around with a flamethrower or an RPG or, you know, fully automatic weapon, we got a big problem at a distance. So I urge everybody to really look into this. And so when I'm consulting with what size an order should be, I ask this unit organization element, what are you practicing? What's your AO, area of operation? What are you actually practicing? And so if you have a, like, let's say you're a more rural police department, it's always like it's one guy for 60 miles for 60 miles. And he's got all the time, there's always 2 or 3 threats in a car. Then what you need is 4 suits to really train decision making and managing fear, right? Because if I roll up on a scenario and there's only 1 suit, I know who the bad guy is. I've identified in advance who the bad guy is by putting him in any suit or any color, right? But what you want to do to teach, because for liability, for verbal de-escalation and evaluating the psychophysical and all that stuff, we want our agents, officers, soldiers, whoever, to threat discriminate and then be able to articulate it in after action. They did this. This is why I did that. But anyways, let me share.
So if you've got 5 or 6 role players and only one of them's wearing a suit, it's sort of like you're saying, it pre-programs. Okay, obviously there's going to be a certain response for that guy. So
right. Well, what'll happen is let me just pop this open here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. This, by the way, so here's what I'll do. I'm going to blaze through this, but this is actually a lesson that we do. If any one of LEGEAR's clients purchases 8 suits or more, we'll work out something with them, and I will personally run you guys through the course and make sure you're dialed into proper, effective scenario training based on the science and psychology. Awesome. And it'll take your training to a completely different level. But in the how you decide how many suits you want, you go, well, I need a minimum of 2, but they're, medium, large, extra large. If I'm in the correctional field, do I got small officers? Do I got big officers? I want role players. And if I'm teaching people like, oh, there's one person here and they may be surrounded by 6 people, it doesn't mean it's going to be a 6-on-1. But what we want is that person to be able to diffuse their vision, identify a threat in advance, pick up pre-contact cues. So there's a whole science and psychology to this. But our most common purchase is 6+, where you've got, 2 officers and 2 or 3 bad guys, and then you've got 1 or 2 extra suits where somebody's on standby, like waiting to come into the game. Somebody gets tired, or you want to switch things up a little bit. I always try to push people for 8, 10, 12 suits, because if you've got a class of like 20, if you got a class of like 20 people in there and you only have 4 suits, we got 16 people standing around. I'll show you in some of these pictures here. You'll see here, just going through this quickly, you're going to get different ideas of the gear and its application here. So I'm going to try and blaze through this, but just super, super fun. And there's a great example of, whoops, I just started it over again by accident. You just saw that one here where everyone in the class is in gear. And that's what you want. But of course, for some people that might be cost prohibitive. Like here, this is actually a shot from FLETC, the biggest training center in the world. They've got, I think at the peak of their purchases, they had over 200 suits there, right? But they train every federal agency. There's a good shot of different example, different scope of stuff. So I'm gonna zip in here, and you can see again what you're doing is we're getting people to totally stress inoculate here. So this is a perfect example. This is more advanced force on force. They're using Sims or UTM but you can see the guy on the left in the yellow shirt and the guy on the right in the yellow shirt is a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And the unit's coming up and they don't know there's a guy hiding behind there. So we talk about the 3 R's: realistic, relevant, and rigorous training. And when people understand our science and psychology, which isn't in this presentation, but there's a whole how to be a good bad guy, how to train your bad guys, how to train your good guys, they suddenly can figure out very scientifically, let's focus on this area and let's do X amount of reps of that. And you're stress inoculating the brain and you're revealing emotional, psychological, and physical limitations in the training so that you can work on them in training. And then when people are out on the street and they got to deploy these skills or tactics, they've got a bedrock of confidence. So these are the 3 R's here. And again, people are probably trying to read this, so I'll go through it really quick. But R1 is it realistic? Can the role player move and talk? Is the training sport-based or congruent with use of force? R2 is it relevant? There's a lot of people practicing things that are irrelevant. And what I mean by that is, like, I'll look at a move or a tactic and I'll go, have you ever seen anyone get attacked like this? But they're still practicing it.
Yeah.
And we just want to make sure that you actually, these are the threats that you're seeing. And it could change. Like if your focus is undercover work, that completely changes than if you're SWAT, which completely changes if you're corrections, which might change also if you're like running through a SEER course in the military, right? So, and then the last one, is it rigorous? Are you getting the feedback where someone goes, a minute into that scenario, I wanted to quit because I was gassed. Well, that's an aerobic capacity problem. We need to modify our training. You're doing too much long distance. You got to be doing sprints. But here's the beauty is if you do our scenarios, what we call ballistic microfights, following the 3 R's, you create that work capacity based on fighting, combatives. Next. So this is actually the BMF. Watch this a couple of times. Let's watch it again.
Basically,
so on this, what's happening is the guy on the right is a 160-pound cop from Texas. The guy on the left is one of my role players. He's about 230 pounds here. What everyone's doing here, you can see everyone's in gear. You can see the guys in the background. There's about 30 people in the class. This is just this angle. But if you look at the list on the right, we're replicating a credible threat. So here the guy's seated down. In this training, we're training some cops to come in and remove a drunk from a bar who's started a problem. And he comes in, he's trying to defuse it. And then when the guy gets up, he attacks him with an overhand left hook. But the options that the role player has here are, you can tackle the guy, you can throw a left hook, you can throw a right hook, you can go up the middle and try and choke him. In other words, it's what we call a jack-in-the-box moment where, and this is where our training differs, and you can only do this in high gear. I mean, you look at the speed and mobility here, is when the role player stood up, Sean, the name of the guy on the right, had no idea what the attack was going to be.
Yeah.
We had identified and agreed Socratically in the class, what would you see over and over again? When someone goes to hit a cop, you see sucker punches, or you guys call them king hits, I think, right? That overhand John Wayne punch. So we dial that in so that it triggers the flinch. We convert the flinch. He pushes away danger. There's the spear, and he develops it. Going through here, we want to reverse engineer all scenarios. Watch this. Here we were practicing with a special unit. Vehicle extractions. We're using one car on concrete. This is a great example here. We didn't have to, like, how many times, like, I get called, hey, do you need mats? I go, no, we got high gear, right? Yeah. We're going to use this on the floor so you feel the power of the floor. You don't want to fall on concrete, but you're wearing a mat. You're rolling around. So we have 2 guys, 2 fights happening simultaneously over here. I guess we got some audio on this. And they're struggling over a knife. So this isn't about technique here. Everyone who's still watching this, it's about moving and having this surprise attack suddenly happen, right?
It's reality.
Yeah. This is a montage. It's pretty badass. Check this out. You can see how hard he's hitting. He's moving in here. Watch this knee to the head here. And the role players are taught how to move with this. These are all ballistic micro-fights.
Yeah.
Watch this. Anybody watching this, don't watch this and go, oh, why didn't you do a guillotine there? How come you didn't step back and kick him? These are police military tactics where we're keeping in mind, watch this. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Gun side pin, you can't transition to your pistol here. So you got to use something to get out of that. Look at that knee there. And it's again, scan the threat, transition, scan the room, now continue. Yeah. So these are actually protocols that we teach in our Ballistic Micro-fight program. There's one more here. I know we're running a bit long, but that's cool. I want to show. Role player's still trying to get on him. Short knee there. Bring him down. Quick transition. Again, skipping through here. This one is my favorite one to show you guys. This is huge. Everybody in this video, everyone in this video is a trained either martial artist, defensive tactics, combative specialist. Now, here's what I did. It was one of our scenarios where look at what we're doing is we got the wrestling mats at a police department about 10 minutes from my house. We took their grappling mats and we stood them up to simulate pillars, right? Like, why aren't they on the floor? Because you're wearing the gear. You don't need the mats. So picture this, Seps.
Yeah.
I then took improvised weapons and I handed them to one person on the pillar, but nobody knew what the weapon was. I'd walk up, AK-47, baseball bat, hatchet, knife. The person on the other side is then standing there and they don't know who their attacker is, how big the attacker is, because I'm moving people, and they don't know what weapon it is. If you think about how unique this training is, I'm going to spend a minute to do this because this is what happens during an active killer scenario where people are trying to figure out what's happening. What they're doing is their emotional, psychological system is trying to catch up to what's actually happening. And it's not like wax on, wax off. Oh, I'll do this counter.
Yeah.
Your brain is going, holy shit, right? Now, so watch this. It's very short, slow motion. But what's incredibly important here is watch the chaos that ensues, because we say go and nobody knows which way to go, but nobody wants to look bad. So they've got real performance anxiety. And then when they identify the weapon, they don't just do their martial art moves. So check this out. Look at the left side, right side. The person goes right. Oh shit, he's coming back this way. Closing in, the hatchet misses. Grab on. You're trying to remember, clear, control, counter. People are losing their shit. You should have seen their faces after this, But look how dynamic the gear is. Look in the back there. Look at this here. This guy's throwing the guy down. I mean, and we would let them go on. And of course, this is just one iteration. We were in gear all day, But this is the most important thing is high gear is a missing element for realistic force on force training. I'm going to, I'm not going to go through the whole thing here. They can get all this stuff from you and all the stuff there. But let me stop the share and come back here and talk to you. But I wanted people to see that and go, in other words, if you don't know what you're doing, there's a basic template. Like, let's say you're just suddenly you're pulled into the training and you're like, I don't know what to do. We can give you a basic template. If you're super experienced or you're rehearsing a mission specific capability, the gear's there for you and you can shoot it, you can hit it. And it's modular, right? Which means, let's say we got some new recruits and we're just trying to teach them not to blink and freak out. You can just put the helmet on. You don't need the whole suit on.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Like Tony, as like in society now, there's less and less people that have actually had physical contact with other people. Like, when I was growing up at school, like fighting was like, especially in Australia, in my age group, was like, if you hadn't had a fight by the time you finished school by times of 100, then, Whereas now it's like so removed from reality that
Yep.
there is actually no access to that reptilian brain of ours that's actually formulated responses and
100%. And it's a huge problem. You see it in a lot of CCTV and videos of police in fights. You can see a trepidation and a fear just to get in there and get dirty. The gear is amazing way. If you look at the demographic and you go, oh, our police force is 100 people and like 80 of them have never been in a street fight. You got to remember this: the person who's going to fight a cop has been in hundreds of street fights.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so it'd be like me, going to box, never boxing against the guy who's got 100, fights, and I'm going in there with 0 fights or 1 or 2 like sparring sessions. It's a scary, scary moment. So the gear is also, I've used it, like when we're doing like women's self-defense courses, we noticed that a lot of women are afraid to touch aggression, to feel aggressive. It's counterintuitive. And they're like afraid to express that power. And we would use the gear on the role player where I'd say, you're not hitting this person, you're hitting the gear and a role player. So it can be worked also to help these officers who've never been in fights to harness that aggression and express the power of a palm strike or a baton strike and do it in a way where their brain can acclimate. It's very valuable.
It's awesome, man. Well, I don't want to keep you much longer. Big takes out of like today's chat is, from me, which is the specificity that you can use a suit. So you only just said it recently, but being able to use a suit on concrete floors around vehicles. When we're watching the videos, there's no padding around in their buildings. Where obviously, so you transform any building into a training area. The suit becomes that protective area, and also it still allows for the movement. Also, the second point and a major take from this is I represent you here in Australia, and we sell high gear suits, but you and I we're altruistic as well. So when we're trying to get out, what are the good numbers? We're not saying, hey, buy 17,000 suits because that makes Tony Blauer this amount of money. Of course, you're running a business, but at the end of the day, the amount of suits you need to buy, is reflective on what sort of outcome and capability you want to end up with at the end of the day.
Right. And if I can, I got to go teach, but I want to share a true story. Bob Willis, still friends with him to this day. He's one of the original authors with Gary Klugowitz, who wrote the book Street Survival and The Tactical Edge. And they were produced by Caliber Press. Every police department has in there this big encyclopedic. Well, I met Bob Willis in 1995 I met him in 93, but then he came and watched a class I did in 1995 at ASLET, American Society of Law Enforcement Trainers, back in 95 in, I think, Alabama or wherever. But he watched me teach, and he comes up to me, he says, you teach the 3 seconds before the fight we all teach. And I was like, what? He says, I'm watching, you're talking about the moment that somebody gets a fear spike and their body starts to hesitate to get to their weapon or gun, or their hands start to come up, and you're teaching people to navigate violence inside the reactionary gap. And we became friends. Well, I didn't know this, but he was the training director for a high liability component at a university that specialized in law enforcement training. And so this was out in Wisconsin. And he brought me in every year for years while he was there. They had a $4 million shoot house with an elevator. Every room had video and audio. And he immediately bought 25 high gear suits. Guess how big their classes were? 20 in the class, and they had 5 spares for modular. You might have a guy who's got a gut, so he needs an extra large chest guard, but he was regular everywhere else. So he's a large here, medium shin guard because he was short, whatever. But they had 5 spares. They had 20 because the class always had 20. He understood the science and psychology of having everyone in gear, so you didn't walk in and see one guy in the corner with gear and go, that must be the bad guy, and run towards him. You still had to threat discriminate because they were teaching the after action that was required of everybody. But here's the biggest thing. We did courses there for years. And then one year and it's funny you just made me think about this. It was their end of year, and he calls me up, and I'm friends with him for years. So they're bringing me in, they're paying me for contracts. They have 25 suits. And the worst thing about our gear is they don't wear out fast. So, it's like, I know guys that have had their suit for 10, 12 years. And I wish they wore out as fast as tires on a car, but they don't. And so Bob calls me up and he says, "Hey, it's end of year. I got good news for you. I got money left over and I got to buy gear. And how much gear can I get for 17,000? That's how much I can spend." And I said, "Bob, you're not going to believe this, but magically you're going to get $17,000 worth of gear." So he laughs, right? Because what am I going to say? He goes, "No, well, how many suits?" I meant, how many suits does 17,000 get me? I said, "Well, you already have 25. And I want everybody who's in purchasing to listen to this, because this is transparency and integrity. And if you know Bob Willis, call him and ask him." I said, "Bob, you already have 25 suits. Why do you need 12 more suits?" I don't know what the math was. 11 suits plus shipping. What do you need that many suits? He goes, "Well, what do you mean? I want to buy more gear. I can't buy training. I got to buy equipment." I said, "Well, what are you doing now? What do you want to do?" And I said, "What are you using the other suits for?" He says, "Recruits. We're doing a lot of it." He described what he's doing. I said, "Well, what are some of the more advanced things that you're doing?" He said, "Well, we started a new SWAT program." And I said to him, "Well, when you're doing your SWAT movements through the house, is it a 4-man team, a 12-man team, 6 men? What is it?" He says, "It's 6 guys. We do twosies. We do 4, guys get out, they practice their stack." I said, "Well, then you need 6 suits. And how many role players would you have?" He said, "Well, the most we'd ever put are 3 or 4. I go, "There you have it. You had 6 suits plus 3 or 4. That's 9 or 10 suits." And what we did is we built a package based on a vision for training that now those suits became dedicated for the SWAT program. He had 25 suits for the other one. They bought 9 suits plus some of the transport bags. And I think they got like 4 extra helmets, Yeah. So I want people to think about that. We're not just here to, like, if you have a question about how many suits you could get or a question about this stuff and it's going to decide, contact SEMS. We'll get on a Zoom call like this and we'll talk it through, because it may be, just get 3 suits, but get 20 extra chest guards, because you're teaching people for the first time how to do knee riding to control a suspect. And so you want chest guards and knee pads for the class, because you're just introducing ground fighting. And you can buy like a bunch of components. Anyways, we're there to help you.
Thanks, mate. It's much appreciated. Hey, thanks again for your time, Tony. And, until next week, mate, stay safe.
This is funny. We talked earlier. We said, let's keep this short for everybody, 20 minutes. And it's like an hour, 8 minutes already. It's important information. If people are serious about their training, they're going to watch it.
Need to be serious.
Yep. Okay, buddy. Be safe.
Stay safe, man.